You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for our final recap of India v England. It's been a week now since that Test series ended, and we've got some final thoughts we want to talk about that. The main one being, what does it mean for the Ashes? Meanwhile, Max, there has been some other cricket. The 100 is underway, and we'll be talking about our impressions of the 2025 season so far. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. How you doing, Max? Did you have a nice weekend? Did you do any cricket?
Hello. Yeah, I did have a nice weekend. I did do some cricket. We played in a competitive game where we lost, but it was it was enjoyable. It was nice to be back playing after not playing much this season, and I've got a really sore hand because yesterday I was sanding my front door with a mouse sander, and it really hurts now because I was gripping it and it was vibrating a lot, and I didn't realize that I was going to spend the entire day like feeling like a claw. But there you go. That's my weekend. How are you?
What is a mouse sander?
Well, like the ones that sort of have like a triangular shape on the bottom. You know those? They look a bit like a computer mouse, and you hold them like one. That's why. I think that's why they're called a mouse sander.
Interesting.
I could be wrong. Please correct me in the comments.
Oh, yeah. Do let us know. Before we get going, a reminder that you can find us in a number of locations at the Cricket Pod. You should like and subscribe, whichever platform you are listening or watching on. Tell your friends. Make sure you click on that button. There's a lot of people, Matt, still like 50% of our audience. They come back every episode. What the hell are you even finding it? They're Googling us. Have these people released another podcast? You can cut out the middleman. You can click subscribe. It looks good on our stats. It makes us feel happy and delivers, the podcast straight into your ears. And if you want to support us further, patreon.com/the cricket pod is the place to go. Max, we'll start with our, final thoughts on England v India. With a week gone now, the Test series came to a close. Are there any major themes or thoughts that you didn't feel like you had the chance to air during the contest or immediately post contest that you now like to revisit?
Well, I think the first thing to say is just how much I enjoyed the. I'm not going to call it animosity because it wasn't animosity. But you know what I mean, right? The rivalry that was brewing throughout, and I think now it's all, the dust is all settled, and everyone stopped listening to like people from yesteryear having weird opinions about stuff. We can all just sit back and enjoy the fact that it was a very competitive series. Everyone gave everything, and I think in the end probably 2-2 was fair. That would be my first question to you. I think on reflection about how it all went, I can't think of any reason why a draw isn't the right result from that series.
I think that's a good place to start. I'd probably agree with that. I don't think a narrow win either way would have been like outrageous either. Had England managed to get the last 6 runs and won 3-1, it would have flattered them a little bit, but they'd have probably been able to say, well, we won all the close moments. As it turns out, they didn't. And India won their close moment on the final day, and I think that probably balances that out. Overall, the fourth test at Old Trafford being a pretty drawy draw in the end, even though England had the best at the beginning of the match, I think suggests that sort of not that much between them, and both sides probably looking at things and saying, if we'd caught better in the first test or the fifth test, depending on which team you are, we'd have won that season 3-1. And put all those factors together, I think basically what you're saying is right. I think it is difficult if you support either of those teams to be massively aggrieved one way or the other. I saw some people. There's an argument going around that India were really, really unlucky based on false shot percentages and some of the more advanced metrics. But I'm not absolutely sure I totally buy into all of that as well. I'm not sure in this series of how good the data collection was, having sort of watched it. Basically, I thought it was weird earlier in the series. To address this, in I think the third test, Nitish Kumar Reddy was all over the place against Jofra Archer. Jofra, I don't know, something got Jofra going, and he was bowling really fast. And Nitish Kumar Reddy, like, very obviously couldn't really.
He wasn't enjoying himself.
But if you looked at the live stats on that, he had something like a 95% control rating, which basically means that everything he was doing was excellent. And it didn't pass the eye test. So
no,
I get my eye on that through the series, and I think the recording was probably a little bit off. And I think you have to remember as well, like, the people doing the electronic scoring for ESPN, they're not doing it from a kind of data collection perspective. You know, the point, and also the point of them doing that isn't so that people can analyze the information later, and so therefore it doesn't really matter if they're a little bit biased or just not paying attention that much in terms of what they're collecting. What it's there for is to create one graphic on the ESPN website that kind of, you know, gives you a little bit of an indication about what is happening if you're following the game on the internet. And because the sort of, you know, we managed to take a little bit of a weird tangent here, but because data collection in cricket is really bad, beyond, like, well, it's really good in some ways. Like, the outcome of every ball is captured well. There is a good scoring system for cricket, but there's
some very fancy data collection, but none of us are actually allowed to see it.
Well, yeah, and so I do. So I don't know if I totally buy into that.
Well, I think the other thing as well on control percentage is it's a bit like when we were talking about whether a team won a session or not. Not all shots, full shots are created equal, are they? Like, a full shot when you're trying to play a full defensive is probably a bit more likely to get you out than a full shot trying to hit one along the ground and it goes, I don't know, slightly in the air but still in a gap. Like, you can't say,
there's a little bit of bias
and that and all the rest of it, which does, I think, come in when you think about the two, you know, the way different people play cricket, right? Like, if Ben Duckett's control percentage is low from consistently trying to play a defensive shot, then he's bad, but he's not doing that.
What actually sealed it for me, and like, makes me think that 2-all is fair and there's not really an angle you can spin here, is that India have been, you know, in quotes, unlucky on this metric for 5 series in a row. Now, that's either a data collection problem, where sometimes those players are being given the benefit of the doubt, or they really are the most unlucky team that have ever existed. And I don't think across the course
they've got rid of Mohammed Shami, and they're still the most unlucky team ever to have existed.
So I thought, basically, Max, I thought it was a pretty fair result. Did you, with Ross, did you do the whole player of the series thing? Did you get into that discussion?
We didn't go into it too deep. I think we had a little bit of a chat about Harry Brook being given the award by Gautam Gambhir as a bit of a laugh, and saying that Siraj very much deserved it. Otherwise,
I basically say that I think both coaches made weird selections, didn't they? Did McCullum want to change his and not nominate Gill or not nominate Siraj? There was some thing in there. I thought that Siraj was head and shoulders above everyone else in the series. So overall, and I know that Shubman Gill broke a bunch of records and, like, had a stellar series, a 9 out of 10 probably. Maybe, like, and I'd say a 9 out of 10 because of how easy it was to bat. Like, and you know, what would a 10 out of 10 been for getting some runs in either the Lord's match or the one at the Oval?
Tendulkar being Tendulkar's record for runs in a series.
Yeah, so
he would have had to do. He would have had to retire out in respect to him, though, wouldn't he?
Yes, of course. Yeah. I'd say a strong 9, maybe 9.5 for Shubman Gill, but I think just the number of votes, and like if you look at what's, you know, why it's so important that Siraj had this series as well, it's like the alternative bowlers weren't that good. If Siraj doesn't bowl all of those overs, then Prasidh Krishna or Kambodge or Shardul Thakur are going to be picking up those overs, and that's such a downgrade. so you've got all of that. Then you've got like the 25 wickets, and then you've got the sort of heroic spell on day 4 and into day 5 at the Oval. That I think I said to you and Ross, like that's probably up there with like Ben Stokes at Headingley in terms of like how much of an individual effort that was to win a game for his team from a position where they really were not favourites to win the match, like 60-1 at one point. And I think you combine all those things together, and you have to say, I mean, like, Siraj comes into this series as like a good player, but not really a great player, I would say, and probably leaves the series having elevated himself up to a great level.
He was a good player who has it in his locker to do great things, and now I think he's taken that extra step. I think also, if he hadn't got injured halfway through, Rishabh Pant would have probably been in with a shout. The way he batted, he was.
But
he did. He did get injured, so he doesn't get it. But had he stuck around, he was a point of difference in that India batting lineup to everyone else, and the way he played, and that was pretty key, I think, to the way India went about building their innings.
What about the series as a whole? So we've done the player there. Like, what was your favourite moment, and how great was the series? Like, was it the best ever?
I mean, I'll the second question first, because it's the easiest. No, not the best ever. Like it had some really good moments, which is obviously why you asked that question. But as a series as a whole, I don't think it touches the sides of Ashes 2005. I'm not sure if it quite gets to the BGT. And was it 2019 when we did that? When India overcame the entire team being injured.
Maybe 1920.
Yeah, can't wait to get you to the Gabba and all that. But it's still a really good Test series. I just think there was too much cricket that was genuinely dull. Like there were passages of play for 3 days, like in some of the Tests, passages of play where it was just quite tedious, and that's points in the negative column. But in each of those cases, it did turn around and become quite exciting for the most part. So it was, don't get me wrong, it was an incredible series. The fact that we got a result in most of the games, everything went to the 5th day with something on the line. You can't ask for a lot more than that in a Test series, in fairness. So it's well up there, but not in that top tier for me.
Yeah, I'd probably say that too. Basically, I think there was just too much bad cricket. Like the fact that it went to 25 days is not necessarily a sign that it was always really, really exciting. Sometimes Test matches that are really good last 3 days. Like it's not the Test going to 5 days. It's great when you do get the drama, but like also it can mean that nothing happened basically. earlier in the Test. Again, a bit like Shubman Gill, so it was a strong 9. I didn't think it might be the best series in England that hasn't featured England v Australia. That I can think of off the top of my head. Like there's been a couple of dingers with South Africa over the years. I think it being 5 Tests means that the category of competition is like there's less for it to compete against, right? But like I don't think it was better than 2023. I think that was an amazing series. Like I think 2023, because neither side won, it won't ever have the cachet of 2005. But I think like and probably as well or definitely as well the level of cricket was lower than 2005, where you just had these freak circumstances that meant you kind of got you got an all-time great team versus a team that for 5 matches managed to put everything together that they've been trying to work on. And like you had this amazing 5-match slugfest. 2023, I think you have 5 better matches. 2023, I mean. So, yeah, did I say 2023? Yeah. I think you have 5 better matches. Yeah, I think all 5 of those games were really good. Even the draw in 2023 was, pretty good. You had Labuschagne getting a century in the dark and stuff like that. It was great, and I think that the fact that people were getting out a little bit more did mean that you.
Yeah.
I think all 5 of the day ones in this series were 2 out of 10 days cricket.
Yeah, I mean, what was the most wickets that fell? 6 on a day one in the entire series.
I'm not even. Was it that high? Maybe it was 6
in the last one when it looked like it was going to be all over in no time, and then India clung on.
Yes, or did England lose 5 in the third test in where was it, Lords? I don't know.
No one was supposed to be called out on day one anyway.
No one can remember anything interesting happening on day one of any of these matches. Day 2 mainly followed on, except that the sort of like the turn for the other team to just bat very easily for a long time. I don't think as well. I don't know why this happened, but during the series, it became less of an issue. But earlier in the series, the pitches were incredibly flat. 2, the ball was unusable. So if wickets didn't go down in the first 20 overs, it was basically like whoever was batting at that point had 60 overs. Like whichever 2 players, were batting, had 60 overs where it was going to be quite hard for them to be out. And there was quite a lot of runs they might be able to score.
Yeah. I even forgot about that. That was all we saw for the first 3 test matches, wasn't it? Was people complaining about the ball for about an hour. It was like, yeah.
But I think, obviously the way it ends. So if we were going to talk moments for a second, I think the final test, that actually is an all-time great test.
I was going to say for me, the moment of the series, it has to be Chris Woakes coming out to bat in a sling. I've never seen it. In my lifetime, and it was so good. It was so cricket because it's stupid. In what world, in what sport is someone just going to come out and play professional international sport with their arm in a sling? It's ridiculous and it's dumb. And the only thing that would have made it better was actually watching him face a ball, because we all wanted to see it. Chris Woakes batting left-handed, one-handed, but even just the sight of him coming down the steps in that sling, it was incredible.
I think that is the image that will probably will clearly live longest in the series. The fact that it was sort of all a bit futile in the end, no one will remember that. They'll just remember that he ran up and that he didn't face a ball, but they'll remember the image of the guy coming down the steps with one arm.
But if England had won it, or he'd got the one not out like Jack Leach did in that Headingley test, it would have been too much to accept. It would have been silly. It would have been really silly. So it's nice to have a little bit when all these fairy tale things are all lining up. It's just nice every now and then to have the balloon burst and realize that reality is a thing.
Yeah. Right. Final thing then, Max. What does this mean for the Ashes? From an England point of view, India can go away. That's in English cricket's mind, they're an irrelevance for the next 2 years. What does it mean for England down under?
I think there's probably 2 things it means for me. Number one is they're going to have to pray with every fibre of their being that Jofra Archer can play enough of a part in that series, that Gus Atkinson stays fit, that maybe Mark Wood is usable for at least 1 or 2 tests, and that I guess Bryden Castle will be the other guy, and that Ben Stokes can put in as much work as he did in this series in Australia, because there were times in this series where England were absolutely stuffed until Ben Stokes came on and did something out of nowhere with a ball that didn't actually work properly and do something. And I think England could find themselves unless Australia go down this route where they have in recent times of some quite juicy green pitches, which I think would be interesting. Unless that happens, I think Ben Stokes is going to be such a key part of that middle overs period for England, and I think we've seen that. Yeah, when you look at who England probably would line up with as their first choice, it's actually reasonably exciting. And then you think about if a couple of them get injured, it could be a bit of a slog for them. That's one. The other one is I don't see Ollie Pope scoring a run in Australia, and I don't see Jacob Bethel doing much better either. But that's based on watching him bat twice at the Oval against a ball that was doing bits. So maybe that's harsh. But
yeah, he was good in New Zealand. New Zealand and Australia are like not always dissimilar in terms of conditions. I kind of agree, though. I think Ross and I talked about this after day 4. It was clear that the guy had never batted in the situations that he was batting in, so he didn't really.
Well, he's barely batted all year. Like, he played a few games in the IPL. He's not played any red ball cricket. So I mean, there's an element of sympathy for him.
Yeah, and it's not even. It's not even so much the live match practice thing. What I mean is, like, we talked a lot during the series about teams drifting because they didn't have a game plan, and often this was India doing sort of weird stuff. And obviously, that was the reason we were talking about that, is because there's a new captain, so it was an interesting narrative to discuss. Bethel had exactly the same problem with the bat for England, though he and Jamie Smith, to be fair, I think in at times as well. Like, when the conditions weren't right for them, or the game was in an unusual situation, it didn't look like they had clarity about what it was they should be doing. And I think the way you get that is by being tested in somewhat similar scenarios, or even not. You don't even necessarily have to be the one batting, but if you see people and play with people who have been in that situation and watched how they go through that process, heard how they go through that process, discussed with them how they went through that process, it helps. Otherwise, it's quite being there is, it can be quite a lonely. It looked like quite a lonely position to be in, and I think. I know he was batting with Root, and Root was probably, roughly trying to coach him through this situation. But I don't think it's necessarily the same as having been there 4 or 5 times yourself in various different matches over a couple of years.
And knowing what your release is or something like that, right? Because that was clearly where both were struggling. Like, Jacob Bethel blocking, fine, turning the strike over, no idea, and Jamie Smith just played the same shot 15 times until he got out to it.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think if you look at what Brook and Root did, who, Brook's not massively more experienced, but he is more experienced, and Root obviously is. Maybe don't look at what Root did, actually, because Root's a freak.
Look at what Root did and wish you were that good.
Brook had a template that the rest of the team basically could have followed, and I don't know when he was out. They needed 70 to win with 5 wickets, 6 wickets if you include one-armed Wokes. Like, it basically took one guy hitting 20 runs off 20 balls to make that game definitely won, and nobody really tried to do that apart from perhaps Jamie Overton. And I think that reflects badly on Bethel and Bethel and Smith in that scenario, and I think there's definitely something to draw attention to when they play against Australia. I mean, I think if you're not on the positive side, everything you said about the bowling from an England point of view is true. Like, if England do manage to get a proper bowling side out, they can, and I expect them to be competitive against Australia.
Especially with the issues Australia have got with their batting at the moment.
If they get half that team out, half that bowling out, I think they could win a test. I don't think it will be 5-0. If they don't, then they could lose 5-0.
Yeah.
If Archer doesn't play minimum 4 tests and Wood doesn't play minimum 3 tests, and Atkinson doesn't play probably also minimum
All
4
of them.
tests. Yeah, like the drop off after that is pretty severe. I mean, like Wokes was talking about trying to make himself. So obviously Wokes wouldn't be saying this if he hadn't had a conversation about going to Australia. So they're obviously thinking about taking Wokes. Wokes was talking about trying to rehab his shoulder rather than have surgery so that he'd be ready to play. Like the drop off from those 3 to Wokes in Australian conditions is massive. And you could throw Stokes into the 3 that I'm talking about there. Like if they're your 4 bowlers, plus they'll play a spinner who probably won't be that effective but might burgle a wicket here or there, then England, I expect them to have opportunities to win test matches. Like that, they will be able to overpower the Australian batting team on a couple of occasions, at least a couple of occasions over 10 innings. But like the chances of this happening probably fairly remote if we are being honest. So yeah.
I think it'll be I'm going into a series in Australia for the first time in some time thinking it's worth watching. Not is it going to be 4-1, 4-0, or 5-0? Like three options on the table normally. I feel like this has there are all scenarios are in play. England could win it. They probably won't. It's unlikely, but it's not like it would take earth-shatteringly miraculous proportions for that to happen. So that's where I am on the Ashes. I think on the back of this. I think it reminds me of this series in a bit, actually, in that you've got, India are a team sort of in transition coming to England who are sort of a team, what they're doing, but have issues. And it was 2 flawed teams going at it, but actually put on a really good show in no small part because both teams have got some quite big flaws. And that is probably going to be the case when England go to Australia.
I think the other thing is, if you're looking for hopeful reasons from an England perspective, like a number of times in this series, India thought they'd won matches that they went on to lose, or twice. But England managed to come back from tough situations and win convincingly in the first test, and win more convincingly than the scorecard looks, I think, in the third test. If you're playing in Australia, there are going to be days when the conditions aren't in your favour and nothing works, and Australia get lots of runs. But England have shown that it is perfectly possible that if they get to use similar conditions, they can beat you in 2 sessions.
Yeah,
and that is encouraging. I mean, like to go back to your point about like what's the realistic hopes of them winning. The last Ashes series, England were much more likely to lose that 5-0 than to win. Probably like an order of magnitude. This series, they are more likely to win than lose 5-0. And that is the first time that's been the case since they went in.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it.
2011 or 2010. Like there's, and what in the last 2 series they were 1 wicket away from losing 5-0, and the flattest, most boring test of all time in Melbourne, where Cook got 250 or something like that, away from losing 5-0. Like they were, both of those series much closer to being absolutely trashed. This one, I would be surprised if England didn't win a test. I think that's where I am. But I would also, I would be. I think that's probably where it is. I think the chances of England winning a test are greater than 70%. The chances of England winning the series are probably still only 15%, maybe 20%.
Good enough for me.
That's not bad. It's better than 5%, 1%.
1%.
Not that much has to go in their favour for them to suddenly be in a decent position to beat Australia. Like in the last series, they needed Root to get 800 runs. Like that's the only conceivable way they would be competitive in the last series was Root to be Don Bradman. They could win. I would say this. They could win a series in Australia where Root doesn't play that well. They're that good. But like it would be much better if he did, and much more likely.
I'd like him to get 100.
Here's what I would say.
Put that one to bed.
This is like we're going down like some completely pointless cul-de-sac here. England would be more likely to win in Australia this time if Root didn't go than they were the last 3 times they went. You could lose an entire Joe Root from England, and I still think this team is more capable of winning a match or winning matches
in every
in Australia
previous series
than the last 3 series.
Yeah.
Which is like pretty bad reflection on the last decade and a half. But
well, 1 in 17 tells you all you need to know, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're pretty bad. Yeah. Anyway, Max, we shall take a break. Then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the opening stages of the 2025 100.